So it was at about this point in time that I realized exactly what I'd gotten myself into with this project. But unfortunately, I was in a little bit too deep by this stage and just had to keep powering through. So I went out this morning and did my groceries, and while I was out, I also grabbed a couple of little supplies because I want to clean out my fridge and my freezer over the next couple of days and reorganize them so that they're a little bit more functional. Now, I do want to state here that what I don't want to do is fill my fridge with plastic. I'm not going to buy a whole bunch of plastic containers to store things in. I'm quite happy for the objects I buy to stay in the containers they come in. I just want to create a little bit more function and make my fridge look cute. It would also probably be a good idea if I introduced myself. G'day, my name is Morrigan. You'll notice there's a little black and orange cat sitting on top of the fridge as well. Her name is Harriet, or Harry for short. She is the project manager for this operation, and she's just going to hang around and make sure that I don't slack off. So the first thing I'm going to do is unpack the fridge, at least as much as possible, as much as I have room to do, so that I can clean the fridge and also that I can assess the food that I have, figure out what I'm going to keep and what needs to be thrown away. It wound up taking up 1.5 benches, but I finally got most of everything out so that I could start cleaning. Now the first thing I removed were the little detachable shelves in the door, and they had some sticky residue on them. I started to give them a scrub, but I decided that my best sort of course of action would be just to let them soak for a little bit so that that residue would come off a little bit easier. And while they were soaking, I went back to the food and started to make piles. One pile for stuff I'm going to keep and one pile for things I'm going to throw away. And the easiest thing to figure out I was going to throw away was the food in containers, essentially the takeaway food that I hadn't gotten around to eating and that had gone bad. So I don't know how much it shows on camera, but in real life I am pretty small. I'm just over 5 foot, and so I actually needed to grab a stepping stool in order to be able to film what was in those top 2 little cabinets in the door. I couldn't see any of that rubbish that was in the bottom from my natural eye level. It was a bit unfortunate how much had accumulated up there, but I'll clean that out too and get that to rights and everything will be fine. Now, of course, Harry had to come and have a sticky beak and see what was going on, and then she decided that the stepping stool was now hers, and she planted herself very firmly, and I am certainly not going to move her. She is a tiny bit spoiled and tends to get what she wants in this house, so I just shared the stool with her. So while I was up on the little step stool, I also noticed that some dust and debris had also accumulated in the seal along the top of the door. Now, I don't know if there's a particular tool you can use to clean out seals because I don't want to damage them. Of course, that would be bad and I'd have to pay for repairs, so I just want to be very careful while I'm working with the seals. So I've just used a disinfectant wipe, the same as I'm using for most things here, and I've left it at that just so that I don't do any damage. I bought a little white basket to stick the eggs in. So I will say that my personal aesthetic is not super modern and not super sleek, which maybe is why I don't like the whole plastic thing very much. I tend to be quite cottagecore, quite English, quite European, old world, romantic. So I liked the idea of a little wire egg basket, like a basket you would actually collect eggs in. So that's what I grabbed, and I'm going to stick my eggs in there. And the other plastic container I bought in order to corral my cheeses, because I tend to have several cheeses on the go at once in the fridge, girl dinner and all of that. And so I wanted to put them all together so that they didn't wind up scattered throughout the fridge and I couldn't find them, or I forgot I had one. Now I'm grouping the garlic and the ginger and the tomato paste on one side, and then the lemon and lime juice and maple syrup and stuff on the other. I'm putting the condiments together, Vegemite of course, and the jams. I've put my eggs on the second shelf so that they're not too cold, but they're not in the hottest part of the fridge. I've stored the dairy on the bottom shelf because I read that that's a good thing to do. The bottom parts of the fridge are the coldest, and because it's dairy, it's good to keep that particularly cold so that no bacteria grow. Now I did already have a Lazy Susan in the fridge that I was storing sauces and salad dressings, etc. on, and I'm just going to go through those as well and get rid of the ones that have expired. Now there was a little bit of space on the Lazy Susan once I'd done that, so I'm just reorganizing a little bit to put a few things up there as well, like the olives and the sun-dried tomatoes and the Roy Sister Cherie sauce. And I'm just faffing around a little bit to get things exactly how I want them, moving the taller bottles into the middle and the shorter bottles to the front so that it's as functional as I can make it. And of course I'm sticking the chocolate up in one of the little containers in the door. This is in the fridge, but it's not super visible, and maybe that will deter me from eating it, but you know, I doubt it. Now the last thing to do for the fridge is just to deal with the veggie crisper. So I'm unpacking stuff, and that's got a little bit of rubbish, some leaves in the bottom of it. I'll give that a wipe down and then put that back, and then I'm going to organize my fruit and veg in that. Now I do already have one plastic container in here, and it's a compartmentalized sort of bento box type container, and I put veg that I've already started chopping up in here, and I keep them all in the one little container so that they're all corralled again so they don't get scattered throughout the fridge, and I can just use them up. And that's essentially the fridge done, so I'm happy with the state of this. I think this is a whole lot more functional and will serve me well as I start trying to learn how to cook. Keep in mind I'm a single person, so the fridge is not packed to the brim. The food in here only feeds one person, not a family. Now it's the next morning and I'm going to start on the freezer. So again, it's not in terrible condition, but it definitely needs a clean out and an organize. So the top drawer I use to store my fruit and veg. I've got chilies from the garden frozen and stored in here because they all fruit at once and I can't eat that many chilies. And the same goes with the mulberries. My mulberry tree is in fruit at the moment and it's producing a lot more than I can eat at one time, so I'm freezing them to have later. The bottom drawer I use to store my meat, and I keep that on the bottom drawer so that nothing drips. I bought this sort of segmented plastic container, and the reason I did that was one thing I have been seeing that I like is when people freeze food flat and then they stack it vertically. I think that's quite smart and I want to start doing that, but of course I've already got frozen food and I haven't done that with this food, so it's all just in clumps and lumps. So I'm going to start working on flattening out the food before I freeze it and then being able to store it vertically. That's going to take a little bit of time, but I got this little container so that I can start doing that. Once I pulled out the drawer, I could get a good look at the inside, and I noticed a whole bunch of gunk had accumulated just in the inner lip that I don't usually see when I use it. So I'm giving that a wipe down because it was honestly pretty gross, as you can see, and I'm getting that all nice and cleaned up so that it's just a lot healthier. And one problem I always experience when I freeze stuff is freezer burn. And I've tried different containers and different freezer bags and I can't seem to avoid it. So does anybody know how to get around this, or has anybody got some recommendations on bags or containers that don't do this so that the food doesn't spoil? Because at the moment I'm at a loss and I just always experience this and don't know how to fix it. So if you know, can you please leave a comment at the bottom of the video so that I can start doing it too and my food can be preserved better than it is now? So the freezer took a lot less time than the fridge, and that's great because it was starting to drip by the end, and so I did want to get that done quickly before things started to defrost and it started making a mess. And the last thing I want to do just before I finish up is wipe down the two handles for the fridge and the freezer. They are getting a little bit manky, although some of the marks that you're noticing are actually scratches and chips. There's nothing I can do about that. But I just want to disinfect them and get off any sort of marks or grubbiness so that they're nice and clean.